Intro. So, the Bikeriders is based on a true story. You'll never guess what group it's about. I'm just kidding. It's a group called the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. But in the movie, they are referred to as the Vandals. It's one of those really big clubs, with it having at least 4,000 members in it, which only puts it behind the HA, which is another big motorcycle club. But to be fair, when people think of motorcycle clubs, that's the other club they think of, and primarily so. The movie, on the other hand, isn't from a lot of text. I mean, there is text and stories they probably pulled from to get the idea, but they also took from a photo book, which was made by a photographer named Danny Lyon, I'm guessing. Lyon, that's how you spell it. He hung around the Outlaws from 1966 to 1967 to make this photo book of the same name. He stayed for a short time because of what another author told him. Lyon says that he was told by Hunter S. Thompson, who did his own photo book for the HA, to leave unless photo action was really needed. So, we get some photos from the photo book, which is also named The Bikeriders, if you want to check it out. But since there's no story in there, it's mainly just the photos. So if you find that cool and like that, and like the story of the movie, then it might be a cool read for you. We get to see a true love story in the opening scene. Kathy meets Benny, and then true notebook fashion romance ensues. They get married 5 weeks later after meeting. Alright, Ryan Gosling. I understand the game, I guess. Anyways, Benny, who is a member of the Vandals, gets interviewed throughout various parts of the movie alongside Kathy. This is by Danny Lyon. Whoa, author mentioned. So, from Kathy, we also learn that the group was started by Johnny when he was inspired by Marlon Brando. Yes, the Godfather one, but he was in a different movie known as The Wild One, which came out in 1958. So, it's an older movie, so it's not that well known now, probably. But then we get to see leadership challenges as not an insurrection happens, but someone questions Johnny's leadership. Johnny kind of just punches him a lot until he wins the fight. That's how biking is. Johnny beats up the guy who says he really wants to expand the club, and then he just expands the club anyways. So, that's really just called power and authority. That's all it really is. Then the club starts to expand across the Midwest. Benny also gets attacked around this time, almost taking out his foot, but it didn't. So, this kind of just leaves him paralyzed for now. This is also because Benny was kind of wearing his colors in public, which you can't do in that area of the Midwest. That gets you sent to the worst place ever, the Rust Belt. I'm just kidding. Benny ends up in the hospital, as you would expect. Don't worry, though. Johnny has the names of the men that did it, and also burns down the bar where he got attacked. Nothing but the cries of the weak around here. That's what I'm talking about. You leave your trace, just like a dog. Johnny also begs and begs and begs for Benny to go to a motorcycle rally. He doesn't get on his hands and knees and begs, but he still just really wants Benny to go and be there. He even offers Benny leadership once he eventually steps down. Benny says no to the offer, surprisingly, considering how long he's been in the club. But that's also because he's in the hospital. Then, some rapscallion called The Kid, yes, literally named The Kid, wants to join the Vandals. He's here smugly and asks Johnny if he and his friends can join the club. Johnny points his finger at the Kid and says, "Only you can join. Your friends? Nah." And then the Kid says yes to the deal. This makes Johnny a little worrisome to his loyalty to the group, to the gang. So he says no to the Kid's acceptance. This makes the 20-year-old Kid a little angry, as you may be able to put it. So he attacks Johnny with a knife, and bam! Johnny punches and battles him and defeats the Kid. Cut to 1973, where it's almost the end of the Vietnam War, just a sudden jump. The The draft is over, essentially. It kind of still happens, but, like, it's over. No more people getting drafted around this time. But we get more interviews with Kathy about what she thinks the future of the Vandals will be like. Kathy gives, like, an answer that's not too bright, considering everyone's sad, because, it's the 70s. Why wouldn't people be sad? Another reason people are sad, especially Johnny, is because Johnny's lieutenant died in a car accident, so he's not the happiest. And also the club is now more violent because the Vietnam veterans who are addicted to drugs have joined the club and climbed the ranks of the club, so they kind of have more control because of that. Then they have a party where Cockroach, that is a gang member's name, is beaten up for wanting to leave the Vandals. Then some members try to do, like, we'll just say, not so good actions with Kathy in a gang. You can infer what that means, which causes her to get mad at Benny afterwards, because Johnny is able to save her, but luckily, Benny was busy the entire time. Kathy asks him to leave the club, but he refuses and leaves her for a few days. Just typical relationship goals. Like, this is what you see on, like, Reddit. Then Cockroach becomes scared from the incident. He's like, you gotta help me fake my death, man. You gotta. And that's what Johnny and Benny do. They shoot him, but not fatally. So they shoot him in the leg. So bam. Johnny then tells Benny after this, that he can't control the club. It's gotten too out of control with all the new members, and it's nothing like it was before. Johnny also says he wants Benny to take over the club. Benny rejects this, and he moves to Chicago for some reason. Just normal stuff. The kid from before that Johnny beat up for abandoning his friends is back, and he's now a member, so guess what? Bam. He challenges Johnny to a knife fight because he now wants leadership of the Vandals. Johnny accepts, but when he goes to the fight, the kid shoots him with a gun. So he literally brought a gun to a knife fight, whatever. So now the kid is the leader of the Vandals. So I wonder what they'll be going up to. Well, Kathy tells Lion that they've been a criminal gang now. Whoa. Kathy tells us, as well as Lion, they've been involved in, like, drug trafficking and murder after the kid took over the organization. All the other members were forced to go along with them or leave the club in various ways. One of those kind of being death. The other one being finding a job that's stable enough. Benny becomes really sad after learning about Johnny's death, as you would imagine. Kathy comforts him after he comes home to cry, and then they both move to Florida to try to live a better life. Benny's a mechanic now, and he quit motorcycling and motorcycles in general. Kathy says they're happy and all that, and hopefully that's not coping. So hopefully they're better, but Benny gets happy when he hears a motorcycle. Bam! End of story. Bam! End of story. Roll credits. There's a thing that can be seen throughout the movie. That being the American dream. And by that I mean the true American dream. The fact that it isn't the same for everyone. And in fact, it's just an idea and a vision for what people want their lives to be like. We can take a look at everyone who we imagine lived in a post-World War II America. So kind of like around the 50s, let's use that time frame. What are some things that come to mind? I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, I don't know what you said, but you can say things like people having kids, owning a home, and a car, and are happily married. Though that last one may be a stretch, it hits the idea home about what we want to look at. This is the typical idea we imagine when we think of the American dream. We imagine the American dream as this nice house, white picket fence, and, all the shebang, like all that nice stuff. When in reality, that's not the American dream for everyone. In this movie, right, we see Benny and Johnny as these people who are free and almost cowboy-like, as we can imagine from the motorcycles. They don't have all these qualities associated with the American dream that we would think they would. But they are still living the life that we would look at and think, wow, they're happy living that type of life, kind of, when you look at it. It makes you question the idea of what the American dream is because of how we put labels on things. We can put things in the boxes of what they should look like, and for some people, I know when they look a little different, it doesn't count. So, it's different for everyone. But that's besides the point. We can look at the evolution of the American dream because it has changed today versus what it was in like the 50s, 60s, or just overall the time period this movie came out, or like was supposed to be based in. Back then, we already said those things, but because of how the world has been, those aren't really attainable. A lot of people in the United States can't buy a house just because of their sheer price and some other factors. And that high price has made us all really used to disappointment. The disappointment of not having what people had in the past really settling the stage for us not having high expectations. I've had conversations with friends personally, and like their American dream is one of two things usually, which I'll talk about both, but it's good to know what like each of them are and go into them like in depth. The one that you may hear often is, I want to get a house, but I don't know if I can afford it, so I'll be fine with an apartment. Which is fair. Of course, not those words exactly, but you get the idea. The goalpost is kind of being moved closer and closer so that you can be content with your life. When you imagine a new goal for so long, you forget what your original goal was. That's just how we work. We remember stuff differently. Now that we have that in mind, we can return back to the bike riders, the people who didn't have the ability to live the life others were able to live, so they decided to find their own life. They kind of moved the goalpost for themselves. Kind of what happens in the second example of the American dream, which is the change part of it, but it still shows both of the examples pretty well for what they are. The movie does, at least. The idea of freedom meant around this time, which meant that you could live any life that you want to, even if it goes against the status quo. And it's like seen as weird, I guess. I mean, around this time, it's also kind of like that, but just a little differently. The status quo isn't really there. It's just more unsaid. Or if it is, it's only in also some areas. It's hard to spot. The ideas of society being more structured and not tolerating some people's lifestyles. It still exists today, where sometimes people's lifestyles, even if they're fully legal, are treated differently and like foreign ideas to some people because they are just different from the status quo. That shouldn't really be the case because no matter how you look at it, once you limit the freedom of others, you kind of have to question why you deserve the freedom, because people shouldn't be limited in these ways if they are living a life that's fully legal and all that. But we can move into the second thing I usually hear from the idea of the American dream, that being the I only want to have a comfortable life answer, which you might hear sometimes, which is a fair answer. Everyone just wants to live a comfortable life where they can live safely and with the knowledge that they don't have to make sacrifices. That's what most people see as the American dream, or the idea of it. Since it isn't a physical manifestation, it really comes down to what people can want in life, like what they want in their cozy, ideal life. In the movie, Benny and Johnny's comfortable life is less comfortable than what most of us would imagine to be like something cozy. But to them, it's cozy. It really can be described by each of their dreams, by each of their goals. I like to say to each their dreams, by each their goals. To how people get to their destination is their journey. Exactly. That's basically what it is. Like, how you get there is up to you. But you have to build it brick by brick to get there. We see in the movie that a dream can be maintained by an individual, but the external forces on it as well have to keep it alive. We can look at the Vandals in the movie. The Vandals just want to live a simple life, but the way they've turned matches with the society they live around. their gang becomes more dangerous as the external forces start to get to them. Those forces being a lot of new members who turn the gang to something that resembles a criminal organization. Johnny couldn't control that. He says it in the movie himself. When your life gets out of control, you just don't know what's going to happen to it. I know it sounds basic and all that stuff. You kind of would have imagined this, but it's just kind of true. You feel confident when you're in control. You ever drive? Exactly. Do you feel like you're more confident when you're the one behind the wheel, or when you're in some type of, like an Uber, some type of car like an Uber or a taxi, where it's essentially a stranger? Some people they might be used to it, but some other people, like in rural areas, car-dependent areas, prefer to be in control of their life. That's the thing that the movie shows pretty well, a control factor. Johnny loses control and everything spirals down. Extreme example, but it makes sense in a logical sort of way. This is how people think and how they've felt about their future for a long time. We can take a look at some big things that have happened in just the past 20 years. The 2008 housing market crisis and the 2020 COVID pandemic to start. Both of these caused heavy recessions for a year or more, and after this we got the modern American dream. Really just the two situations mentioned before, but just the aftermath of them. You might be wondering, what do they have in common? And that thing is loss of control. In both scenarios, really, people have accepted a loss of control and really just hope that the cards play in their favor. That's why we have elections and turnouts, mainly. Luck is something that no one has control over, even if some people, aka the gamblers, like to think they do. People really just have and hope stuff goes their way, and if it doesn't, well, we've kind of to play the blame game on a lot of things, which seems just natural at this point. If we can blame our problems on other people because we don't want to take responsibility, then how could it possibly be a fault in either us or a system? No, that can't be possible. But that's a conversation for a different day. We're just talking about the American dream right now and how it's changed. The bottom line for the evolving American dream is people will always say it's dead. That's a pessimistic view of it. But it's not dead. It's just changed and shrunk over the years. We just have a high standard for what it was because of the 50s. The music in the movie also shows what era it takes place in, and also cements what the times were like back then. It's one of those movies that uses copyrighted songs from the 60s, 70s, just to get the idea about what time it takes place. Many songs that were actually songs back then are probably played here. It's stuff like blues, rocks, and pop songs from around the time. Honestly, it shows how music people listened to back then kind of made life a little different. Their life is a little tougher than the average person, and so they have to represent it with harder genres like rock. It's a good way to show off the dichotomy of the life of people who have it hard, aka the Bikeriders and the people like that, who are outcasts, we can say, and the people who have it, we can put in quotes, normal, which is really nobody in this movie. It doesn't highlight that fact. The music isn't really one of the music that needs to fill in the silence. There isn't too much of that type of music in this movie, but it's just more of a setting up an atmosphere when introducing certain parts. It's usually the music you use over a montage of setting up what people should expect. Imagine this, a motorcycle club gang meeting up while rock is playing. That's essentially what the copyrighted music is for. I would say it does a good job at what it's trying to do. It's not unique was what it does, but it also can't be, since they're using songs from that time period. So you also can't have unique genres to definitely define it concrete, unless you want an original soundtrack, but then you're not loyal because that's new music. That's a whole different thing in music. But since they used time period musics from the 60s, 70s, that kind of made the music selection limited for the time period. But it's what happens when you do that method. You have to kind of adapt to it, really. The Bikeriders had a decent budget and got a decent amount back in the box office. It has between $30 million and $40 million for its budget. It's unclear, but it made back $36.3 million in the box office. So overall, nothing too special considering how it might have not made its budget back in the box office, but that doesn't matter. Nothing special, but there's a lot of movies like that, especially with marketing and all that. We can look at it. We can look at Until Dawn for that, like the movie. So now we can think about what the people reviewed about the movie. On IMDb, our moviegoer's favorite site, it has a 6.6 out of 10, which is lower. But it has a 70 on Metascore. It's in the green, but also, let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes score. Any guesses? It's an 80%, which is high. But that's because a lot of people probably said it was a good movie. And on Prime Video, it has a 6.6 out of 10. So, not as consistent as some other movies and games are, but it's got a range, and I'm pretty sure that range is the same on like Letterboxd, where it's probably around like, I would say like a 3 to a 3.4. It's a pretty average range for most of the websites, but it gets the job done. That's all that matters. So, the Bikeriders does a lot of good when it comes to showing the American dream and all of that. The real American dream and all that, yeah. It's overall a good movie. Also, if you like watching movies about motorcycles and all that. It's just one of those movies that's pretty good and also fills in the space if you need a space to be filled in. Like, oh, I want to watch a movie, but I don't know what movie to watch. If you can actually find this movie without paying it, I'd recommend that. But I saw it in theaters, so I did end up paying for it. So, would I recommend the movie? Yeah. I like a lot of movies, so I would say watch this one. I would personally give it an 8.8 out of 10. But I always say form your own opinion by watching it and not through people like me. That's how you truly get the best score and the one that fits you and all that pizzazz, that corny stuff, I guess you can call it. And bam, that's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pretty please.